Hey everyone, future editor David here, just dropping in. We had a technical issue with the recording, and so my microphone wasn't picking up correctly, and it got recorded on a different source, so my audio sounds a little funky this time. Apologies for that. We'll get that corrected on the next one. Otherwise, enjoy the episode. Talk to you soon. Welcome to the DC Universe, a comics versus podcast. We're the Lorehounds, your guides to Gotham City's latest party pills. I'm David.
And I'm Elysia. And picking up where we left off a couple weeks ago, this time we're taking a look at episodes 4 through 6 of the HBO limited series, The Penguin. Those are the episodes Cent'anni, Homecoming, and Gold Summit.
Make sure you're caught up before listening on, because we're going to get right into spoiler territory.
Jean is unfortunately a bit too busy this week, but he'll be joining us again for our episodes 7 and 8 breakdown with his thoughts on the rest of the series.
I think John has even threatened that he might catch up with the series before. We'll see.
It gets another one. That's another one in.
We want to hear your thoughts as well. Send feedback to lorehounds@thelorehounds.com. Voicemails are also encouraged. Or head over to our website and use the contact form there.
Please do also join the conversation on our Discord server, where we're talking about the Penguin, Agatha, and whatever else you're reading, watching, playing, or listening to. You'll find links to everything in the show notes.
Elysia, did I see that the Agatha finale dropped a day early? Or was that on time?
It was on time.
Oh, okay.
But yes, I did watch it first thing this morning before spoilers got in my face.
We won't talk about any of the details there. Are you happy, though? Yes,
I am happy. They broke Marvel trends with finales in a good way.
Oh, that's good. All right. Happy to hear that. Especially with these two comic spin-outs. Not spin-outs in the right way. Like these, hybrid projects, I guess, in a way, because they're not following mainline stories, right?
The Agatha is part of the MCU.
Right, but I mean, out of the comic book stuff, right? Like they're weaving new stories.
Oh, sure. Sure. Yeah. They play fast and loose, especially the MCU.
Right. So it just feels nice to have two. It's actually kind of feels nice to have DC making a showing along with Marvel, and then having two good shows simultaneously. It feels a little bit of an embarrassment of riches.
Yeah, except this is not the new DCU Penguin.
No, right, but still
this is
DC.
Elseworlds. Yeah, it's still
exactly,
DC. Yeah,
still DC, right? So
we're still waiting to see with the DCU if it's gonna live up to the hopes.
Right, fingers crossed. Because it feels out of balance when they're not representing. It was kind of a shame what was going on before. Anyway, we're here to talk about Cent'anni, Homecoming, and Gold Summit. Hopefully, I got my Italian right there. I've heard some other podcasts butcher that, so I was like really nervous. Anyway, let's just set the episodes really quick. Cent'anni is all about how Sofia winds up in Arkham and then getting her revenge after 10 years. Homecoming is where Oz takes out the heart of the Maroni family and then goes into hiding and then finds his base. And then Gold Summit, our most recent episode, is where Oz gathers his allies and enemies alike in getting his new Bliss business off the ground. We're going to kind of go through this in a character-based discussion and more of a meta-narrative rather than a scene-by-scene or episode-by-episode. And I know Jean did send in some written thoughts. Elysia, do you want to read his notes really quick?
Sure. He says, this series is amazing and all of the actors should win awards. Just two things that I want to say. Sofia is frightening and Oz is as well, but in a different way. With Oz, he tries to disarm you with his fast talking and compliments. Folks like that are harder to deal with because they hide their contempt for you until it boils over and then boom, they explode. Sofia, you see it coming and she doesn't care at all that you see her coming at you. She isn't trying to hide anything at all. And she wants you to know she isn't hiding anything. And I think that Oz hugging Vic is my favorite moment when he tells him to look up, meet his eyes, don't look down, and then embraces him after Vic just killed for the first time. That is some real gangster shit right there. Murder, theft, drug deals, stick up, etc. You do it the first time and you feel bad, sad, you feel afraid. But then the guy who has taken you under his wing, showing you the ins and outs of the game, embraces you and whispers to you in a loving way that it gets easier. That's it. You're done. You're in. And now Vic is in for the first time. I'm afraid for him. This is great stuff. Have a dope pod, and I can't wait to hear y'all break it down. Peace.
All right. Good notes, and looking forward to hearing Jean's final wrap-up thoughts. What are your overall takes? And then there's a bunch of stuff in Jean's comments here that I think we'll end up picking through when we get into the full discussion.
Mm-hmm.
But where are you at?
Yeah, I think that especially, I mean, for me, Sofia is, both of them are really fascinating characters. You know, like I said, okay, this is getting me to understand a little bit better the crime genre, because like I'm rooting for a murderer to get the entire city addicted to drugs, while I'm also rooting for another murderer to beat him to it.
And then for them to like brutalize each other in the process.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think Centani, the Arkham episode, that is my favorite in this series so far. That was really, really powerful. Just seeing the entire transformation of Sofia, and how she fought against it and then finally gave into it, and how she's trying to still. She's like, okay, I'm no longer the good girl that I was, giving speeches for charity, but she's still trying to do it on her own terms in a way that where she can live with herself. And I agree with Jean that she has more of a moral compass, whereas Oz wants to be the good guy, but he doesn't necessarily have the character for it. He has the desire more than the character. And she has both, but it's just been corrupted through this Arkham lens. Yeah. What do you think?
I think this is a really great series. This is one of those unexpected surprises in the year. We get these occasionally. We get all the news about what's coming out this year. And I know that this was pre-announced, but it's not at all what I expected it was going to be. And I'm really enjoying having a really gritty crime drama on a Sunday night, appointment viewing. They put a lot of effort into the production and the design of this. The acting has been on point. Some of this writing is just really incredible. Like Jean was just pointing out now, that the whole setup with Vic and Oz in this moment, that's a really nuanced moment. And going in and actually taking a whole episode to give us Sofia's background, in Arkham and her setup and transition or transformation into, this feared hangman like character, even though, she's not. And I love the fact that this is called The Penguin, but and I was a little worried when we started, even though I was enjoying it a lot, I was a little worried that this was just going to be a vehicle for the Penguin, and that Colin Farrell, this was just going to be a acting vehicle for Colin Farrell. But as our point of view, we've moved around and we've gotten a lot into Vic. We've gotten a lot into Oz's mother. We've obviously gotten into a lot of Sofia. So yeah, it's the Penguin story because he's the chief actor here, the protagonist in a way of like trying to, it's his machinations that are driving the story and setting up all the conflicts. But the fact that then we move around and we spend time with all of these other characters is really enjoyable. And it really spreads the acting love around. I mean, all of these actors I'm just enjoying every performance that's on here. So yeah, I think overall, I'm just so pleased. And I just have no idea how we're going to wrap this up in, a couple of more episodes. There's such rich storytelling in here. and I'm going to miss the show when it's gone.
Yeah.
I love a good ongoing series, but then there's other shows, it's going to be one of those bittersweet moments. It's like, Station 11 or Queen's Gambit, those kinds of short series that pack such a wallop.
Or Agatha all along.
Yeah. Is Agatha only going to be a single season?
As far as we know now.
Okay. Yeah. So when they pack such a wallop and then you're like, wait, I want more. But then it's also just so satisfying that they've wrapped it up. So I really have no idea how this is all going to get wrapped up. And that's a good thing, right? I can't see what the writers have in store for us. And that means that the writers are doing a really good job. So.
Well, that's a thing also because of the format. Like, well, first of all, I think, they call it the Penguin, but we have 3 protagonists, I feel like, here. And that's why we talk about all 3 of them. But also the format and the nature of this being an Elseworlds project and everything, it just means that, like, the titular character could die at the end of this series. I don't know. Maybe that's how this ends. Who knows? Like, really, they could go any direction and it would make sense and be satisfying because I believe in this team of writers. They've shown us
exactly
that they know what they're doing. They know where they're going.
Exactly. And that feels good. That's what I want from a good prestige, level television show. And then, like I said, I think on the last pod, this is great. It's pulp material, but it's prestige level quality in the writing and stuff. So it's hitting all the different sweets, the spots that it's hitting the sweet, the savory, the umami, all of the whatever the things are in your tongue.
Was it salt, fat, sweet, sugar, heat, something like that?
Yeah, exactly. So cool. All right. Well, let's do this. Let's take a little quick break and then we're going to jump into it. And we'll start off with talking about Sofia's arc over these last 3 episodes. And we're back. So let's get into Sofia's story. What do you have, Elysia? What's on the top of your mind for Sofia?
Well, I mean, I guess we have to start with her episode 4 transformation, and we see her at first, like, just her. I mean, so many compliments to Kristen Milotti, and who obviously everyone's saying the word Emmy with her name, and I hope that the Emmys are listening.
I would hope so. I mean, for them to snub it because of a content reason, as opposed to, I mean, like, if you just look at her performance, it is extraordinary. So I agree.
Yeah, I think this might break through, and I think the presence of Colin Farrell might help that too. But I think this has now been dubbed prestige enough.
Indeed.
But yeah, so we see compliments to Kristen Milotti because we see her in this earlier phase, and it's the costuming too. What is it? Christopher Salon, I think, is the costume designer who also deserves awards. We see her, she's a sheltered little rich girl whose mother has died. But she doesn't yet realize the full darkness behind that. And, she is a charity spokesperson. And then she, obviously her mother dying is like the one major scar in her life at that point. And so when she gets called out for not helping women who died like her mother by that reporter, then that's a turning point for her. That's when everything changes.
There's a conversation that's around on the internets about, is this comic booky enough? Is it not? Is it, too much? Like, where's the balance point of like this?
I mean, there's people who say it's not comic booky enough, need to read more comic books. That's what I'm going to say.
Exactly. But what I love what they're doing in the transition to the screen is they're taking somewhat, and I'm not a comic book aficionado, but they're taking some things that I think of as cornerstones of good comic material, which is, character backstories, characters and their crews, bringing their team together, or even having their base or their secret lair. And in this one, we get that epic level backstory for Sofia that I would want from a comic book thing, right? Him taking me out of time and then actually going in depth and in deep into this. And so putting her into her time in Arkham and giving us that well, not even the Arkham stuff, just going back to like what you were saying with the with her mother's death, and then the unfolding, setting up and then the unfolding of this mystery of her father's predilections, this horribleness. That is a really deeply traumatic experience for her, right? I can't even imagine, when and then to see it and then to start to come to the realization, but then trying to suppress it in your own mind, like, no, this really can't be true. Like my father really can't be this horrible and evil. It's a really compelling backstory.
Yeah. I'm remembering the scratch marks on her father's face after the reporter tells her that these other women who died had scratch marks on their face. And, when she found her mother hanging, her father had scratch marks on his face. So this is where she puts it together that her father probably killed her mother. And then, and then
to suppress that in your own mind, to go, no, I can't believe this. And
then there's another woman there saying, you can help women like her. You can save women like her. And so, I think she did the right thing morally in going to meet with the reporter. And what do we think about Oz's culpability in tattling on her and I believe him when he says he did not realize it was going to end up with all of that, with her committed to Arkham forever. And,
Right.
But still, he turned her in to give himself a leg up. What are your feelings on that?
Yeah, because we didn't see him actually talk to Falcone Senior. I forget the character's name. I mean, it's Falcone, but
Carmine.
That's it. Thanks. Yeah, Mark Strong, who we're going to get to see in Dune Prophecy coming up. That's exciting. That we didn't see Oz actually have the conversation, so they're leaving it shrouded in mystery, which I like, because then everybody gets to have their own interpretations of it. And Sofia has her interpretation of it, Oz has his own interpretation, we have our own interpretation. We have to pull we have to make a bunch of assumptions about what was said. So, and the way that I look at it is Oz's part of Oz's job. I'm not arguing the morality of it. I'm just looking at the setup of it. He's this, he's a driver, and part of his job is to look after his charge here. And he probably has some standing orders about keep me posted and let me know what's going on. And when he sees a potential threat, like, hey, we've got a reporter nosing around, if he didn't tell somebody above him, then his position is in jeopardy. And so the right thing for him to do was to say something, say something, I guess. I don't know. That's kind of weird. But then, so that's pretty, for me in my mind, that's pretty straight. That's pretty linear. That's pretty straight. Where it gets really interesting is the fact that Sofia basically accuses him and says, you knew that my father was the hangman. You knew that he was murdering these women. You knew what his predilections were, and you did nothing to stop that, change that, protect me. You could have, a reasonable person would have made some assumptions about what kind of danger I would be in if you then put me into that situation where my father knows that I know, potentially about what he's been doing. And I think that's the interesting moral dilemma is, his job was to say something, but was it his, what was his job relative to the fact that this guy's a real sicko, right?
I guess his job is defined by the fact that he's paid by Carmine, but
right.
It depends how he defines his own job. And I would have hoped that he would define his own job as protecting Sofia. And clearly that's not the case. So he might not have intentionally sent her to Arkham or intentionally allowed her father to keep on killing, but in his own selfishness, that was the result. And he doesn't seem to really care all that much about, he's like, oh, yeah, awkward.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's true to himself in that regard, in that he wants to climb the ladder, and he has this belief that he's destined for something greater than just being a driver.
Yeah. Yeah. So we got a pretty brutal look at Sofia's time in Arkham with the electroshock therapy and everything, and until finally, and she has this woman next to her who goes by the name Magpie, who is a character from the comics, but they just kind of took the name and they're like, here's an Easter egg for you.
Just a little nod, a little wink. Yeah.
But yeah, so she is being baited by the people in the institution, presumably at the urging of her father, until finally she snaps and takes it out on Magpie, who may or may not have been snitching on her for more of this bliss drug. And obviously snitching is now a sore point with Sofia for obvious reasons. But then she just completely brains her and then screams, I told you I'm fucking innocent. It's like, yeah, way to prove it. But I mean, she was right, but also she's just been pushed beyond her brink. And
I think this is,
she's become what she's been accused of, but in a different way. Mm-hmm.
And this is one of those situations where the only way out is through. Right? As she keeps pressing up against the barriers and realizing that everybody's been paid off, this whole thing is a setup, right? Carmine has dumped a lot of money into these people and to create this thing for her, which, just step back, taking a step back for a second. What a piece of work Carmine is. Not only has this sadistic, murder fetish thing, but then your own daughter, your own flesh and blood, to put her into that position and then to actively pay and actively set up to have her psychologically broken, if not killed. That's some seriously messed up stuff. And I don't think he necessarily realized, or anybody would necessarily realize, that this is this crucible for her. And to take this, this little girl, this society debutante, and to run her through this gauntlet, and for her, mettle to be tempered and to come out the other end with this clarity and this focus and this ability to survive and to be violent and to brutalize other people to get whatever it is that you want or need. That, I think, is a great surprising. We've seen it, right? Because we have the omniscient thing, but I don't think Vidi saw it. He didn't see it coming.
Poor Uncle Vidi. Do you think he really cared about her mother?
I think so,
as he claims. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, this show just really make things move along quickly. So she gasses the whole family, kills them all off, except for her niece, which, her niece Gia. And you have to wonder, because now Gia is a part of the system, and is that going to come back and bite Sofia later?
Yeah.
I just think of Agatha and something she said about a certain Seven.
Okay. Or I kind of go to either. I haven't seen the last two episodes of Agatha.
Oh no, this is from an earlier episode. That's how the people who are stalking her, how their origin story is because she showed this kind of mercy.
But then I kind of flip over to Quentin Tarantino to Kill Bill, and when there's a conversation where she says to the daughter of one of her former compatriots, like, if you're still raw about this, come see me later on in a few years. I'll meet you wherever you need to meet, and we can resolve this. So will Gia come back and have a beef with Sofia at some point?
And then, of course, and then she leaves Vidi alive, but then she kills him like almost right away. So she does the whole like tying him up thing, gets him to, lend his support. And then when as soon as he starts to protest, she uses him as a prop to show people what happens. She says he's the only made man at the table, and then she takes him out. And that is both she and Oz are using a similar tactic of, those people, Oz says later, they didn't even know your name. And she's basically, doing the same thing.
I have two thoughts there. One, about the VD situation, but then also too about this, what they're doing with their, both of their positions from taking over the mob stuff. With VD, did you read it that she was trying to get his support? I read it as she just needed to get the cash.
I mean publicly.
Right.
Oh,
right,
sure, that too.
Yeah, she wanted just to get the cash, but then when he offered, hey, I can help you, I think she then do that. But then when she murdered him, that was just the baller move. Like that was absolutely, he's like, oh, okay, be cool now. Okay, let's not get over our skis. And she, she doesn't hesitate. And I think it is such a powerful object lesson to the people that she's trying to get onto her side, not as a threat to them, like, I'll kill you if you step out of line. It's more the object lesson of, this is a new era. This is the, like you were saying, this is the only made man here, and we're tearing that system down and we're building a new system based on us. And then the whole thing with Oz, and this goes into my second point of this language, like unionizing the mob and this very sort of proletariat sort of, smash the power. I could just see her like holding up a raised fist or something. It feels I had really confused feelings because they're saying overthrow the existing power structure and, take your place, and get rid of these 1%ers. They're telling us to eat cake and we're saying, no, we're going to drag you down to the square and guillotine you kind of thing. It really caused me a lot of emotional confusion, but in a great way, because they're speaking this very lefty progressive politics in a mob situation with selling drugs and taking over the city.
I mean, people unionize people turn to crime because they feel disenfranchised. So
exactly. And they're trying to take over the franchise, which is great. But that whole moment.
But I mean, just that, like, they feel like their power is taken away, disenfranchised in that sense.
Yeah.
Powerless, yeah.
And then she claims a new power, the Gigante power, right?
Right.
And that is such a cathartic moment for the whole show and for her character. It's really, and you talked about the costuming. And I think there were some conversations around makeup. I didn't read any of these articles or anything like that, but I know I saw some references to them that they were intentionally styling her makeup to be, and her costuming in a way so that it's this, it is this costume for Sofia, for her to present. It's almost like putting on a cape, right, or your mask, right? This is her mask. Is the way. But she's also.
She's also unmasking in a certain way because you see the more she's like showing more her scars. Like she used to cover up where she claws at her own neck. And she has a mysterious scar on her shoulder. We're not sure where that came from yet, but she's now, when she's about to do her worst, she shows it off. And I guess it's also a way, it's like a battle scar, a way of like, I might look like this cute little girl, but trust me, you don't want to mess with me.
Exactly. I guess I didn't realize that. I noticed the big scar on her shoulder, but I guess I didn't realize that we didn't get the origin story for that scarring.
No, but I mean, it could be from
Arkham.
It must be from Arkham, of course, but we didn't really see it. We haven't seen it happen.
And for her to show off that is such a great moment of psychological transformation. She's embracing herself. She's embracing the pain that she went through. She's seeking a kind of wholeness. It makes me think a little bit of Earthsea, like where the main character becomes whole because I don't want to spoil too much. Anyway, there's this whole thing of okay, here I am. I'm this debutante girl, and I have this dark persona that was created in my time in Arkham, and now I'm fusing those two things together, or I'm accepting both sides of that, and that is now my power, right? That is, and it's on display. It's not hiding behind little, cute little neck scarves and things like that, but it's full on display. And if you can't deal with it, we're going to have problems.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that especially, I mean, I love everything she's been wearing, and it's been great on the official HBO podcast to listen to the costume and hair designers and how much fun they're having with this character, and how how her hair is transforming and things like that. And but yeah, that yellow dress with the gas mask and that Egyptian style eye makeup that is going to live in my head forever. That is such an iconic look. Yeah.
And I could see the comic book panel of her with the gas mask and the yellow dress and the gas, forming around behind her.
She looks very different in the comics, but I guess they are making her, by adding scarring and stuff, they're making her a bit more.
Well, I was just taking from what they gave us on screen. I could make a picture of my own, right, of a comic book panel of that, and just see
absolutely. Yeah. Someone should make that into an art print.
Yeah, exactly.
But speaking of the comics, so in the comics, Gigante is her last name, I think through marriage, and her maiden name is actually Maroni. Her mother was a Maroni, which is the family that she's warring with in this. But now we see her. So after she tells them, "Oh, we're getting rid of all the maid men," then she turns and makes an alliance with Maroni. Yeah. Who... I mean, they have like an enemy of my enemy thing going on, because we'll talk about in a minute what Oz did to Maroni's family. And of course, Sofia now knows that Oz killed her brother, etc. But it also feels like she's turning to him as a sort of surrogate father figure.
Totally. That cooking scene was so tender. And I really had questions about how long that alliance was going to last and whether it was going to be that fruitful. And the fact that he's at his lowest, right? He's his wife and son, even though his son was a bit of a
still a son.
It's still a son, and just the horrific nature of it. So he's at this, low ebb of his life, and then ostensibly the last person in the world that he wants to, next to Oz, walks in the door offering an alliance. So I was like, oh, this is going to be thin. There's going to be beef between them. But then for them to put the situation of them cooking together, which is how intimate, right? That's for human beings, sharing a meal together. That's significant. It's in that kind of intimate setting. And then I loved the twist that he wasn't cooking an Italian meal from his own cultural heritage, but he was cooking something from Nadia's
and listening to Persian music and stuff.
Yeah. And then like saying a little, I'm assuming a little Persian, prayer, like, saying like manja or bon appetit or whatever, that version of it was a really cool twist. And they didn't need to do that. And it doesn't add a huge ton of things, but it just highlights it in a way that I wasn't expecting. And so it drew me in a little bit more.
Yeah. How much he loved his wife. Yeah.
And then how much he's sharing this part of his life with her. So it's very intimate, and she can't, and he's a very, again, like this, like you pointed out, we're rooting for terrible people, right? But he, in that moment, I was just so like, God, he's just being so, like you said, fatherly, and he's bringing, and they're developing this very intimate and trusting relationship. Perfect. It was so good.
Yeah. And her other alliance that's coming up is Dr. Julian Rush, Theo Rossi character, who he's feeling really guilty because we see in episode 4 that he was like the assistant psychiatrist in Arkham. And so he participated in what amounts to basically torture of her, and then until he couldn't take it and he quit. And now he's got some guilt, and it seems like he's letting her work it out in their own sexy way. But this whole dynamic between them is giving me gender swapped Joker and Harley Quinn vibes, because Joker was an inmate in the asylum and Harley Quinn was his therapist, and then he corrupted her to become, the icon that she is.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't realize that was the relationship. I didn't know what the Harley Quinn Joker relationship was, or I didn't know that part of the story. That's interesting.
Yeah. So then I wonder if she's the Joker. I guess the Penguin is her Batman.
I don't know what to make
because
of
the
him.
Penguin has a Robin, in Victor.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's what
and he even got the Robin origin story. Okay, sorry, I'll stop.
No, it's perfect, because it's making me think about, again, all of these other little comic book, what are I don't want to use the word tropes because it oftentimes has a negative spin, but just the established
archetypes.
Archetypes, that's it. That's the word I was looking for. Has these archetypes that we're bringing in, and that's also more of that, and that's really cool. I didn't realize that. But yeah, I just don't know what to make of Julian Rush's character. He's in love with her. He's enchanted by her, and then it has this really weird twist to it because of the experiences in Arkham, and then his own twisted psychology and wanting to be punished and to be bound and all of this stuff. Yeah, I don't know what to make about it, but he's clearly enchanted by her, and then I think he's even more enchanted by the power that she has.
Yeah, well, I feel like all the characters in this show are loose screws, and you don't know if they're gonna like hold or fall, or right. And take the whole thing tumbling down.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we've got Sofia dealing with the legacy of the hangman, and we know she's not the one who was hanging the women, but she had these expectations that she was. It makes people look at her a certain way, that's making her act out and ultimately behave in a certain way. So is she now any better than the hangman? She seems to have her own moral code, but she's killing a lot of people.
It's interesting. The conversation with Eve, that whole setup was so brilliantly executed. The way that they delivered the lines, the way they moved through the apartment, the whole setup of her holding her at gunpoint, and the tension, like you just don't know, is she going to? And you hope that she doesn't, but no, all of that. But the fact that then we get the reveal of Sofia as not being that kind of person, that she does have a code, that she isn't gonna, and I think it's an extension of taking Gia out of the house before she murders the rest of the family, that she does have some lines that she won't cross. And that makes her more of a cogent, coherent character. Whereas a Joker character, it doesn't matter where the lines are. Oh, there's a line there, I'm going to step on it. There's a line there, I'm going to scribble all over it. I'm going to mess with the lines. Where Sofia is establishing some boundaries, and so we can put her at least into a positioning. But this idea of her being horrified by what her father did, but also not eschewing it and coming out and saying, look, I'm not the hangman. Stop making me out to be the bad. She's using the power of the fear of the hangman for her own ends.
She's again Agatha.
So, but yeah, that conversation with Eve, I need to go back and rewatch that, because the acting on that and the balance of power and the balance of forces, and in that Eve sets it up so that it's like, okay, fine, we're gonna have this conflict one or another, so let's just get it over with, and I'm prepared to meet my end if that's what, this really is. And so for her putting herself out there, and then the reveal of Oz, of what Sofia tells her and us about Oz and the reporting back and the real situation. So there's this,
but I don't know that Sofia has I don't think she has a fair picture. I mean, not to excuse Oz's role in what happened to her, but I think she is greatly exaggerating in her own mind, and also to Eve.
Right. And then so that turns Eve, right? So that flips her so that she gives up Oz's location.
I think also another, there are little things that flip her, so she walks in and you see Eve has this elaborate setup for her fashion, including wig stands and things like that. But Eve is at this moment she has her natural hair and she's just wearing sweatpants and she still looks great. But, but Sofia asks her, does Oz ever see you like this? And she's like, once or twice. He hates it, and I think little things like that is just stick in her head of does he even see me for who I am and care about that person? Or does he care about the role I play in his life as his comfort?
Mm-hmm. And I was surprised that by his reaction when Eve rejects him. I guess this is sort of, we're sliding sideways over to Oz. Right.
If we're going to do that, I do have one important thing that I need to say about Sofia, is that I have a bad feeling that her brother was behind some of the stuff that happened to her, and that is going to come out, and she's just that's going to be it.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. I don't know that I see what you're seeing, but that's kind of that would be wild if they went somewhere like that. That would be wild.
All right, I'll wager my internet points.
All right. Well, anyway, on the Oz Eve thing, that he gets so upset when she rejects him, and I was like, dude, don't you understand this relationship? That did you actually put your heart into this relationship? That's what I didn't understand about Oz's character. But then I guess it's that
he's a narcissist. He doesn't realize that he is not putting in the same care and effort that he expects from other people.
Okay.
He thinks he can, do and say, same thing with Victor. He can do or say superficial things. He can call someone else out for interrupting Victor when he's stuttering. But when it comes to him, he'll do that stuff. He's a hypocrite.
Mm-hmm. Right. And he's always in the right. It's always him against everything. He's, what do they say? Main character energy. He's like,
well, he definitely thinks
everybody else is NPCs. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, before we dig into Oz, do you want to actually make a quick swing through Vic's arc?
Yeah.
Before?
Mm-hmm. So we pick up with him. He's been slotted into the caretaker role by Oz of Oz's mother, Frances. And and he's like, Oz doesn't even tell him. He's like, where can I take her? And he's like, I don't know, find somewhere. So he takes her to his friend Calvin's house because Calvin got shot by Sofia, as we saw on when was that, episode 2 or something? And so this is Crown Point.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So this is Crown Point. This is where we saw flooding. And it turns out this is also where the Cobbs used to live. This is where Oz grew up. And Frances she's declining now because she is back remembering bad times and the loss of her sons. And Victor, though, he seems to be kind of thriving a little bit because we see his stutter ebbing as he gains confidence. And does it feel like he's more confident than he has been so far? Yeah,
I think he had a purpose, and he had a clarity of purpose of what he needs to do, and figuring out where to position themselves, and and then having Oz saying, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Actually, that works out." He's doing things, and then of course he's working the drug trade, and that's going well, and he's able to give pursuers the slip. So all in all, his character is developing, and ultimately in that life, it's going to lead to the fact that there's going to be death involved.
Mm.
That's unavoidable. And of course, they, in just really nice, simple storytelling fashion, they just build up the squid thing. We know that this is coming, right? And the question is how is it going to happen? And how are they going to how are the writers and the directors how are they going to show that ultimate conflict coming through? And I don't know about you, but my pulse was pounding during that scene. Did you find that was did they have the right chemistry there for that confrontation with Squid?
Yeah, I mean, before he killed him, I was like, oh, he's got to kill him. And which is where, because I am, I'm a chaotic good, when I play games, like I'm not the murder one, but they just lead the dots there. And, I'm empathizing with this character. And so like, oh gosh, yeah, dude, you got to kill him now. Like he's not gonna stop.
Go. Yeah.
But I do wonder, I talked about Victor building up his confidence. What is that going to do? At the moment, he's shaken. But then, as Jean pointed out, Oz validates this, probably in the same way that his mother validated this sort of behavior to Oz growing up, like, oh, you did the right thing. You are strong. You are, taking control. So what is this going to do to his character?
And if we look at the narrative beats that Vic's character has gone through, right? They were stealing the hubcaps and he faces that first moment of death with Oz. And then he faces it again with the sunrise moment. And then he's accepted. And then he has these various trials and tribulations of, okay, I've got to, I have to steal this or, manufacture this evidence or handle, drug trade or, he's jumping. And then, the girlfriend, trial of like, I have to choose, one or the other. So he's making very, linear progressions on his character arc. And then the question is, where are we going to end up with Vic? Is what's going to happen to Vic at some stage? Because I wonder, is he built for this world? He's choosing this world, but is he really built? Has the world conditioned him to really thrive without Oz? Like if Oz wasn't there egging him on, he seems like a nice kid, who would have normally gone about his life. And this world is brutal and life is short and you have to be as quick on the gun as anybody to survive. And has he really been conditioned in that way? I don't know.
So I thought about while you were thinking, so they keep showing these clips from the movie Gilda, with put the blame on Mame, boys, put the blame on Mame. And Rita Hayworth is singing that. That's from this movie Gilda from the 40s. And the movie is basically about a character who has to choose whether his loyalty is first to his boss or to a woman in his life. So I just find that an interesting parallel. But anyway, but also, I wonder, he says he wants to be one of the guys in on the action, but it seems like he's actually been promoted above them. So I don't know what he's talking about. Like you've been given,
the way even though he's got, he's Oz's confidant, he still has to, do his sort of apprenticeship, I guess. He's still got to he's got to still build his experience, and Oz needs him to do certain things. And, so I felt that is all just part of his ongoing apprenticeship. And and the part of that apprenticeship is being able to take on challenges and problems on your own. And so when he says to Oz, like, hey, I've got this problem, and Oz is otherwise distracted, and then he solves his own problem, again, that's all part of his growth that that Oz is trying to, see. If he doesn't continue to grow, would he just keep him around as a quote unquote pet? Or would he, but now he's really embracing him and bringing him up as a brother. Because I think that's the thing about Oz is that he's fundamentally lonely. He misses his brothers. We still don't have we don't have the soul for the brothers yet.
They keep bringing it up. So I think it's definitely, we're getting that story in the next 2 episodes. Probably, I'm going to guess episode 7.
You're right. Which hopefully will be, hopefully it's juicy. So far, they've given every indication.
I just want to know, did he kill them or not?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. You mentioned the Gilda thing in the musical. There was another little embed, a little Easter egg for the movie Gloria, a 1980 movie. And it was on the television. And there was a woman shooting a pistol at a car as it was driving by. And it's a movie about a woman who takes on the mob and sort of fights back. And, so the writers there's some background stuff going on for sure.
Yeah.
Very, very clever.
Yeah. So. And Gilda is also a movie about, it's like the Casablanca with unlikable characters,
Should we talk a little bit about Oswald, Ozcom?
Yeah, so we picked up with him with a Maserati funeral, and he keeps bringing up his hero, Rex Calabrese. So now he tells Vic about it. So we know this is how Oz wants to see himself. But do you think he's Rex Calabrese? Do you think even Rex is Rex Calabrese?
No, obviously not, because Rex lives in a mythology. Oz has put him on a pedestal as something to achieve. And what do they say? Never meet your heroes, right? I'm sure he had his own shortcomings and problems, but yeah, he's a mythological character for Oz to emulate in a place that probably, if you didn't have some sort of beacon or narrative to follow for yourself, that's a hard scrabble world to pull yourself up from. And so, Rex fulfills that for him. Did you think with the Maserati funeral, I like how you put that, it looked when they were the camera in front of the car, it looked very much like a monster's face, or it seemed very monstrous to me. But
maybe it's representing, the ugliness of the source of this newfound wealth.
Right. And I like the fact, I appreciate Oz's willingness to recognize the moment of transformation, of saying, okay, that, the past is now over and we are now moving into a new reality. And that means that we need to adjust and meet the moment. And the Maserati no longer serves that moment. The Maserati was a tool for a time, and that time has now changed. So I can easily let it go.
Right.
It's not a problem. He's just like, it's fine, whatever.
He's a good sport about the car for sure. But also, I mean, Vic did save his life. That's why the car's messed up. So
exactly. But then all going to the fact that Oz is not lamenting. It means that he's accepted the future. He's accepted the now.
He loves chaos. Like, he's his happiest when things are going left, And he also, he seems on the surface, he talks about being a nice guy, but then we see when he goes to take the Moroni Santage, fine, that's all well and fair in their families, but he kills everyone in the tattoo studio. Like, even the artists immediately put up their hands and he just guns them down. Like, that is not hero or even anti-hero behavior.
Right. Yeah, they're not taking any chances. I loved the way that they set that up as well, using TikTok, right? Okay, we know where he's going to be. The fact that he's wearing headphones, and so they do the sound design and then the camera focus, right? So they're out of focus as they're coming into the parlor. And it was just a really great depiction of violence for that scene, so that it's almost more intense because of the sound and visual design, rather than just showing us coming in with guns blazing. We've seen that before. This is a funny take. But then what I found interesting too was the guy who actually ultimately captures Taj is Victor, right? So again, Victor is proving his worth, and he's extending himself time and time again. So he's the one who's actually puts hands on him and pulls him down and punches him out. So
yeah. Yeah, and then we see again that in order to enact revenge, Oz will shoot himself in the foot. Like he has to, eat, whether or not he got the mushrooms, he was going to burn Taj alive. And, hopefully with his mother with him, which he succeeded in doing. But in doing so, he ended up destroying most of the mushrooms who can't handle like a fire and whatever the chemical stuff that was
exactly
falling out of the ceiling. So, yeah, he just, I don't think he has what it takes to be a long-term mob boss because he's too chaotic. He will shoot himself in the foot in a fit of temper. And I think Sofia is more stable that way.
I was recently on a Electric Boogaloo pod with Anthony. He, as all of us do from time to time, we get to join him on that podcast. And we were talking about a Tyrion chapter in Clash of Kings. And we were talking about Tyrion's character and how he is a really intelligent and smart operator, but ultimately he doesn't have the wisdom to see that some of his plottings and setups that he's trying to, the little
machinations.
That's the word. Machinations that he has are where the downsides, where the pitfalls are, where the little problems are. And so it's a tragic flaw with his character. And I think Oz is the same. He's really good, like you said, I think Tyrion's
moment. Smarter than Oz, but yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, look at Oz. I mean, they from zero to a huge thriving operation in the underground there. He's good at a certain level, but can he actually be that top dog and actually see out? Because I think his the excitement of the chaos is always going to be his downfall because he wants to have that, like you were saying. He doesn't want stability; he wants chaos.
Yeah,
and that will always. I do
think Tyrion wanted stability and would have been a good head of state, but
But he's always disadvantaged because everybody disadvantages is him. Right. And so he doesn't have the counsel of wisdom. Like, he doesn't have wisdom because he can't have counselors to help him see what he can't see.
Yeah, I see him a bit as a Sofia character, Tyrion, now that I think about it.
Interesting. I wonder if Anthony's watched. Oh, well, that we know that they did watch it. So.
Right. We know they watched. They for anyone who doesn't know, and Properly Howard, there is a breakdown of the first episode from them. Our discussion of it.
Well, maybe we'll have to pull in a conversation with Anthony at some point as
well. So Oz also, he thinks he's a step ahead of something before it's actually done. So he tries to have Moroni killed in jail, and I don't know why he thought that would work, but instead it helps Moroni escape. So and then when Moroni calls him, he's immediately like, he doesn't let him find out for himself and buy himself time or something. He immediately has to gloat. I killed your family,
Right. And doesn't say I killed your family, just like try calling.
Right. Well, because he said so funny you say about being torched, or I forget what the word was, but
Well, and it goes to the old adage, right? If you take a shot at the king, you best not miss. You don't, he screwed up. And I think it goes back to your point. Even though he would rather have had Moroni completely wiped out, the fact that he's not, it's more chaos for him to thrive in and more of a challenge. Like he's always it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. He's always going to create situations where he gets to have to think his way out of a chaotic situation, unexpected circumstances.
Right. Well, I think he thinks that, I don't think he thinks a few steps ahead. He just thinks that,
correct. Yeah.
He's like, I fixed the problem. And then, he really hasn't, like with Eve, where he put her girls in danger and then didn't think about how that would come back and bite him in the butt. She might eventually be done with his bullshit and turn on him.
Yeah, he's got blind spots for sure. Yeah, he definitely has blind spots.
Yeah.
And what do you, I mean, it's not a blind spot. It's a question. It's an interesting question. Is it a strength or a weakness with his mother? Because his mother is a kind of psychological and historical beacon, a way for him to track himself as he's progressing, as his growth is progressing as a, criminal underworld boss. He can always look back at his mother because she's real. Like everything else that he has are memories or mythologies, right? Rex Calabrese or his brothers or his father. Those are all gone and intangible now. His mother's tangible, and he can see, and she can remind him of who he was, and and this this idea that he's destined for greatness. But is that also a weakness because he's got to make sure that she's protected and safe?
Right. Or has he become a more twisted version of what he could have been because of her? Because of her encouragement. But yeah, we find out she has Lewy body dementia, which Lewy bodies are proteins, so that's what the body part refers to. But it does also affect the person's body who has it, and also gives them hallucinations. So that's why she's seeing her sons and stuff. But this is apparently the second most common dementia after Alzheimer's. And it is, as he said, it's often misdiagnosed as Alzheimer's or Parkinson's because of the effect it has on the body. So it's really, it reminds me of this talk that I saw at TEDx Amsterdam in 2018 by a Dutch writer named Henk Blanken. And so this TEDx it was all in English because it's an international thing. So there are people from all over the world in the audience there. I happened to be, for this block of talks, I was sitting next to a woman from South Korea. So I was talking to her about most stuff. And then Henk Blanken, this Dutch writer, comes on and he just says in Dutch, I'm going to say this in Dutch. I'm not going to take any questions and then I'm going to go. And he has, he has Parkinson's and, actually, he might even have Lewy body, come to think of it. But he was talking about his that he's declining and that he wants, the Netherlands. If you think of liberal laws in the Netherlands, probably the third that comes to mind is euthanasia. But his argument is that euthanasia laws are not liberal enough because he basically is at the point where if he wants to have an assisted suicide, he has to make that decision while he's still mentally sharp enough. And he wants to be able to give his wife the right to, put a pill in his oatmeal, basically. Right.
But have a healthcare directive.
Right. But
we would call that in America a healthcare directive, where somebody has a power of authority over your medical decisions. Yeah. And in terms of which you can obviously have in the US, you can't assisted suicide is in most cases just not possible. It's becoming more so, but in the Netherlands it's supposed to be more liberal. But yeah, he's saying basically I have to make the decision to do it while I still have good time left in my brain. And I would rather to live every moment I can with my wife and then, have her be in that position. And I was thinking the poor South Korean woman next to me did not speak Dutch, obviously. And all the half of the audience that didn't speak Dutch, all they saw was everyone sitting in silence and crying. And then when the talk was over, it was immediately like, I'm so sorry, but what just happened? So I have to tell her translate this whole talk. But But it just, I don't know. I think about that. I don't remember a single other talk that I saw that day, to be honest. But I still think about that all the time. And this episode made me think of that too, when she's asking her son to do that for her. And also just seeing reactions online where people are like, that's the wrong thing to do to help her. And I have to disagree. I don't think it's the wrong thing to do, but is he capable of it? And I think there is a lot of dramatic tension, a lot of narrative tension here with Vic as her caretaker and his arc. And then, like you said, this interaction between Oz and Francis. about her health, and then that she's this queen that he's trying to protect, right? And well, in chess, it would be a king, but anyway, like this positioning of if he doesn't have her, is it game over for him, or what does he become without her? And yeah, so I definitely think that we're going to get some,
but also,
and maybe it's going to be wrapped up with the storytelling of his brothers and his the rest of his family history.
But also, if she's not there, he is his biggest fear is that something happens to her.
Yes.
So if she is gone, then he's untethered. But that's in the most dangerous way for his enemies too, because he has nothing left to lose.
Right. He doesn't have to devote any energy, attention, or resources to protecting that part of his identity and of his operation.
Right.
Go ahead.
I was to say, I loved the scene though, just in terms of like showing his humanity and their humanity as a mother and son. That scene where he's doing her makeup, and obviously he's well practiced in it. He does a really good job. But then as you see the hand putting on the lipstick and everything, but you still see the dirt under the nails.
Yeah, right.
But he's like, I want to preserve you. And he tells her she looks like Gilda, and you look powerful. And he's getting his hands dirty, and he wants her to be like the symbol of what he's doing it for, basically.
Right. Part of this mythology that he has for himself. And this idea that here's this guy who's dealing drugs and dealing death, and he just burned a mother and son alive. And yet it's such a beautiful, tender moment between mother and son. I love the complexity that they're giving us in this show. I don't know of another show right now that's doing this kind of level of character work and these intricacies and these complexities and what it's doing to us as the audience. Like the conflict that I'm feeling of like, this guy is horrible, but my God, this moment that he has with his mother is absolutely incredible.
Well, we're going to talk about Pachinko next week, and there's definitely a character there that I have those feelings about. And people are like, he's just bad. I'm like, no, but except when he's good.
Except when he's good, exactly. And then I thought it was interesting and we don't want to spoil any of the Agatha stuff, but there's a character there who has been experiencing something that have questioned. And then if you actually look at what happens, the resolution for that, it could be a very dementia-like experience where people wake up in a moment and you're like, where am I? What's going on? Who are you people? I have lucidity. And then, boom, you get sucked down again. I don't know what the right way to describe it is, but your synapses, your chemistry switches again. And then you're in these literally different realities. Slow Horses was doing this as well this season 4, with the grandfather character who's also experiencing dementia, and how that plays a part in the unfolding of a spy narrative. Because what do you do when you have a guy who was a chief spy during the Cold War and he suddenly is experiencing dementia, and like at any moment he could be spilling huge secrets, right? So it's interesting. There's a little zeitgeisty thing happening with this storyline around that. So, but anyway, Deirdre O'Connell, what a command performance! Like, what a break role for her. I mean, I was looking at her filmography, and it's she's been working steady, but man, this role I think is really putting her on the next level of. It's like, wow, where have you been? Kind of thing.
Yeah. And it's for her, I think, that he goes to such lengths to get the power back on. So he's got another ally / enemy in the government now after almost taking his nose.
And doesn't Vic say to her, or wait, he said to her, like, it was Oz who got the power back on.
Right.
So there's this whole, like, oh, my son, and it's great.
Victor sees things. He sees things. Yeah. He knows what's what. Yeah.
Right. This other idea, which we didn't really talk about with her character, that the way that you deal with somebody, or how you interact with somebody with dementia, Vic is doing the whole play along game of saying, "Oh yeah, it is,
Right.
So and so, he's down at the
Right.
the office paying the bill," and she's like, "Oh, okay." And I remember when I first heard about this approach to just going along with that person's reality, and how much peace it brings them and you, and the stress and everything. And I don't have anybody in my life who I haven't had to face this head on, this situation. So I'm not a person to speak about it, other than that I'm aware of that this is something that people do.
Yeah.
And it was just really interesting. And where Oswald was like, no, we're dealing with reality. We're here. We're now. That person's long gone. And then, of course, he's got raw feelings about it. Like, don't say that person's name. You're not allowed to speak about them. But I just liked how they brought in that little part of caring for somebody with dementia, that whole like go along sort of strategy.
Yeah. No, I remember my last big conversation that I got to have with my grandmother. She was, at this point, she kept reverting back to talking about the road trip that she took when she met my grandfather. And, this is where they fell in love and stuff. And it was a road trip across the US. And she it had gotten to the point where this was the main story that she was focusing on, So, I was talking to her and I tried to bring up, there was another road trip that she also took with my grandfather through Europe. And I tried to just kind of steer things in that direction. I'm like, oh, I remember going into Paris with the roof down and stuff. And it just, even though it was within, the bounds of her being with her husband and being in a happy moment on the road, it was just, it was clearly upsetting to her that I was trying to steer it. She's like, no, we were in California. Like, okay, sorry, yes. And of course, she didn't know who I was because, and for him to be, for that to have been the case, I couldn't be alive. I wasn't born yet.
It's gotta be. I can only imagine the emotional impact of having to deal with the fact that this person doesn't recognize you or know you, but then in a flash, the next day, in an hour, that suddenly they do. It just gotta be hard.
Yeah. The last thing, I said to her was, "I love you" in Russian, and she said, "But I just met you," and then that was the last time I saw her because COVID happened. Yeah.
Oh God. Okay, well.
Anyway.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm sorry that we slid into, well, not sorry, but you know what I mean. So.
But this is something that I noticed that it seems like when in our Discord where we're talking about on social media where people are talking about it, these points keep cropping up in all these different stories because they're so relatable. So many people have been in these positions.
Absolutely. I will shout out the Bald Move folks, our former podcast parents. They do an annual fundraiser for dementia and Parkinson's, that whole sort of research. And so they do a 24-hour marathon. So they've been raising a lot of money for it. And it seems like there's been a lot of medical advances. Like we're starting to understand things a little bit more. So that's good. So anyway.
Well, so back to some gangster shit.
back to not reality.
So, I guess stuff like this does happen, but they're having a gang war about the drugs.
Yes.
And so Oz is, we've had a time jump between episodes 5 and 6. And so he's managed to get like the bliss growing again in his new lair, and he's ready to start dealing, but 2 of the dealers that he sends out turn up dead. And so he has to...
members of another gang.
Right.
They go out, they pull off some corner boys. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then he, this is the threat hanging over anyone who deals bliss will die. And so this is where Oz thrives in making last minute short-sighted decisions. And he's like, you know what? We're going to just give it all away. And so who's going to say no? Just, put it in the hands of anyone who will take it. Free samples for everyone. How do you think that's going to turn out?
Well, I think Stringer Bell would be pretty impressed with his with this move. This is good market economics. Get your product out there, get everybody interested and invested in it, and the undeniability of it. And I think it was smart, and it brought all of the other players to him. He was actually able to bring the Gold Summit together. And boy, what a great sort of St. Crispin's Day, type of speech, or Braveheart or something like that. They will not, he's rallying these troops, and just a fun little TV moment there of everybody cracking their beer as a sound of their like, okay, I'm in. I just thought the whole thing was very well pulled off and very clever. And again, Oz thriving in the way that he thrives, which is I got to think of something in the moment, and here's my play. I can see the big vision and I can see the short-term vision. I can't see the middle ground. And this middle ground is fraught with problems, right, between all of these gangs. So,
yeah. Yep. Yeah, and so now we've have Sofia and Eve have met. Sophia's deigned not to kill her so far, at least.
Such a good scene.
We've got that victory moment of Oz getting the power back on, and then coupled with that, speech where he gets all the gang leaders together from all these minor gangs and says, those made men, they don't even know your names, and they all crack a beer open together, which is cheesy in the best possible way. And Victor and Oz's mom are celebrating these victories, but Sofia is standing in their foyer with a crowbar in her hand, which, by the way, crowbar, Joker's weapon.
Oh, really? Oh, nice. Good call. See, I love the fact that they're putting all these little Easter eggs in there. So for the comic book folks, they're like, there's a richness there. And then for me, like, it's just a crowbar. It makes sense for the character. It makes sense for what she's doing, right? And it's ominous, it's dangerous.
It doesn't take anything away. Yeah, it's not distracting.
No. And it adds things in its own way, which is like a crowbar is a blunt force instrument when it's used in crimes of this situation. So that portends violence, right?
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, we just saw Sofia not kill Eve. So what happens but she's pissed because of all of the things that Oz has done, especially her brother. So what is that? Vic? Okay. Right. She could quite easily, but when she encounters Francis, what is that going to do? What is that confrontation going to look like?
Right. Because how is Francis going to piss her off? And Oz would snap if someone belittled him, but Sofia, we've seen her snap, but is this going to be the trigger or not? And if she does end up killing Francis, does that in a way make things easier for Oz? Because then he doesn't have to do it himself.
Oh, God, I didn't even think about that. I'm just sort of getting lost in the thought of Francis having a moment of lucidity and just absolutely taking Sofia apart, by, verbally taking her apart. Like, who are you and what are you? And like, bop, 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 and just dressing her down. Or we could get some interesting backstory reveals because if she's in the past somewhere, in that moment. But then will Sofia have a moment of humanity and not kill her, or what will she do? Because this is just a poor woman who's suffering dementia, living in, what was a squalid, cold, like, oh God, like they really did a great job of like, this apartment is cold. It's kind of shitty. You got to run this generator, da, 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 da. But yeah, so many good potentials here.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to be a really explosive last two episodes.
And then, so what do we got? We're on 6 now. We're going to 8.
So 2 more. Yeah.
So 2 more. So we have the 3rd of November and then the 10th of November. And then boom, the 17th of November, we've got Dune Prophecy starting.
Right.
So our Sunday nights. We've got
I knew that HBO was going to do that because it would be dumb of them not to, basically.
Exactly.
Amazon, why don't you learn this? Why did the Wheel of Time not start like 2 weeks after Rings of Power ended?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, actually, I'm glad right now as a content creator that that would be too much, but
I'm bracing for 2025. I'm really worried about our scheduling. It's going to be it's going to be rough because there's so much good stuff coming up. But hey, we've got a network of people to help, do different things. And maybe we could wrap up with talking about what's going on in our Elseworlds, in the Lorehounds Elseworlds. What do you've got a bunch. You just, you have been cooking. Your kitchen has
it's been Spooktober madness. Yeah. So just as after we stop recording this, I'm pushing out an episode where Marilyn and I talk about what are real witches. What does that mean? What does that mean in the past? What does that mean in the present?
I'm going to school. It's class is in session.
But there's also there's a fun short story in there and some other audio little fun audio Spooktober gifts.
Love it.
And then of course on the Woolship Dust public feed, there is coverage of the craft and the craft's legacy. And on the Lorehounds, we've been doing the Poltergeist coverage.
Yep.
So Spooktober's been going hard.
I loved your setup for doing I was wondering how we were going to do it, and then when you got the outline done, I was like, oh, this is perfect. Putting the original Poltergeist in the 2015 remake head to head and doing a little sort of breakdown that way. That was perfect. And then for 11Zs, which is our subscriber bonus podcast for movie reviews, we did Poltergeist 2 and 3. And surprisingly, 2 and 3 hold up really nicely.
I mean, they're fun watches, even if they're like, Yeah,
I mean, sometimes those sequels can just trash a property or a title, but they held up. They were okay. And I thought 3 was kind of cool because of the way that they flipped it up and put it in an office building. It's so 80s. It's so 80s.
Right. Skyscraper. Yeah. Condo building.
Yeah.
And as John pointed out, they're short. So
yes, they're back in the day when movies were a nice hour and a half. Boom. Yeah. Get it done.
Yeah.
And then for our Second Breakfast podcast, which is also our subscriber exclusive podcast, we talk about blood sausage. I didn't realize that people were going to actually have
be very squeamish about it.
Reactions.
I mean, you guys eat mussels all the time. Like, it's the same thing. I would rather eat blood than mussels. Sorry. I'm going vegetarian on you again.
Hilarious.
I picked this subject.
Well,
I thought it was Halloween-y. Yeah.
What's our topic? And if you're not a subscriber, Second Breakfast, we talk about a breakfast topic. And then we talk about our what's going on in our individual lives. And then we talk about news and updates in the industry and with Lorehounds, and takes listener feedback. But it's a fun place where we get to talk about other things other than TV and movies. So, and I think next month, did we pick a topic already?
John said he wants to do birds for breakfast because of Thanksgiving, I guess. So I'm going to be an observer on that one.
Well, what did you say? You were going to talk about pea proteins or something? Right?
Yeah. Although I don't eat that for breakfast, but well, I guess I could with sausage.
With for Woolship Dust, you also have Silo about to fire up.
Yes, Silo is about to start. So we are also today, as we're recording, the Silo short stories breakdown is dropping in the book club, and there will be 2 rewatch episodes for the book club coming up right after that. And in the public feed, Luke and I recently released a breakdown of the first trailer that came out, and we're going to be doing weekly coverage there. Like last year, but slightly different because we have screeners this time, so we can be a bit more timely. Yeah. Thank you,
Apple. They are so generous. They're like, "Hey, what screeners? Here you go. Here you go. Oh, this person, that person. Yeah, it's really great." And then you're going to be running point on that at Woolship Dust, but then you're going to be jumping over and joining me for Dune Prophecy, and I'll be taking the lead on that. I just put together a show guide for that, just for the on-screen stuff, and we'll get the Discord channel fired up here in a minute. I was going to do a trailer breakdown again, and then you and I are going to do a season preview, do some little setup about a week. We'll drop that about a week before the episodes start, which start on November 17th. And it's a very short season, just 6 episodes, so it's going to be wrap up pretty quick. And then otherwise for Lorehounds, I'm working on a Star Trek: The Motion Picture 45th Anniversary podcast. We were jokingly playing around. I don't know, Interstellar. I threw the idea out because it's a 10-year anniversary, and people, boy, there was some reactions.
Well, you're talking about me. I don't love the one aspect of, I don't love that one aspect of the story, but I love the science because I know Aisha from every sci-fi film ever is doing an episode specifically about the science of the movie. And that is perhaps the best like science-based movie. There's a really excellent book by science advisor Kip Thorne about it. So
Right. And then we have our end of year wrap up stuff in planning as well. So yeah, we've got a lot coming yet. Radioactive Ramblings, they are doing the Red Rising book club series, doing a series on Red Rising as a book club. They just dropped an episode the other day. And I got to check, what was the last Nevermind the Music podcast that just came out?
Oh, I haven't listened to the newest one. I saw one just popped up. Actually, no, I did. Was it another sidetrack about AI?
No, it was, where was it here? I'm just looking at the list.
The last one I listened to is there was a sidetrack about talking about AI and music versus AI and psychology.
Yep, that's the one. And we're going to start doing a couple of crossover podcast drops to help promote their feed. But if you've not listened to them, you absolutely have to go. It's like Lorehounds, but for music and psychology. It's amazing. It's such a podcast. And Properly Howard, not sure. They're a little bit on a break for their movie reviews, but we know we're going to be doing a joint coverage of Severance when that starts in January. Date, was it the 17th or something like that? So that'll be coming up. Star Wars Canon Timeline, anything coming up there? Yeah,
so the Canon Padawan subscribers are getting a Spooktober bonus that's a short story from the Legends comics about Darth Nihilus. And it's just been such a squeeze this month with trying to catch up on Silo and Dune stuff. November, I'm still doing the sweep through the High Republic with flashback episodes. So more High Republic content. Next up is going to, I forget if I still have to publish the High Republic Visions episode. Did I publish that one on? But then the next one after the next one after that is going to be the Young Jedi Adventures. Going to talk about the Kalnaka comic. Going to talk about Darth Plagueis. Lots of good stuff coming up over there.
Whew, boy, we could spend a good third of this podcast just on what content's coming up. But we should probably wrap up here. So I picked out some music. Hopefully it's fitting. I'll read the Discord server boosters if you want to read the Lore Masters.
Okay.
So here we go. Hopefully this is fitting for the Penguin. Discord server boosters. Aaron K, Tiller the Thriller, Dork of the Ninjas, Duve71, Athena Ajalea, Tina, Lestu, Nancy M, Ghost of Perdition, and Richard W. Thank you all for boosting our server and making a better place for our community to have our virtual water cooler space.
And thank you to all listeners and all Lorehound subscribers. You make this possible. But thank you most especially to our lore masters, Samartian, Michael G, Michelle E, Brian P, SC, Peter OH, Bettina W, Adam S, Nancy M, Duve71, Brian 8063, Frederick H, Sarah L, Gareth C, Eric F, Matthew M, Sarah M, DJ Miwa, Andra B, Kwang Yu, Jedi Bob, Nathan T, Alex V, Aaron T, Sub-Zero, Aaron K, Dally V, Mothership Gnarls, Kathy W, Lestu, Jeffrey B, Elysia U, Fossey U, Neil F, Ben B, Scott F, and always last, Adrian.
We will see you all on a wrap-up for Penguin 7 and 8, and hopefully we'll have a couple of friends along with us. But until then, thanks.
Put the blame on me, boys. Put the blame on...
The Lorehounds podcast is produced and published by The Lorehounds. You can send questions and feedback and voicemails at thelorehounds.com/contact. Get early and ad-free access to all Lorehounds podcasts at patreon.com/thelorehounds. Any opinions stated are ours personally and do not reflect the opinion of or belong to any employers or other entities. Thanks for listening.